morning again. We're excited to have you here. In case you don't know where you are, you're at Copy and Design at Office Court in the Crossroads. So this is our third event. We're pretty excited. We're going a little niche this time and talking about freelance careers. We're trying to put a lot in an hour, so we'll see how it goes, but we're going to be respectful of everyone's time. But we're just going to do a 10-minute speakers around a few different topics and then bring them all back for a Q&A. So if you guys could hold your questions till we bring everyone back, that would be optimal. And I just jumped ahead, so I'm going to jump backwards for a bit. So like I mentioned, we are in Office Port, which is a really awesome space here in the Crossroads. Katie, did you have someone that you wanted to chat about it, or just afterwards?
If people have time afterwards, somebody wants to grab like sort of building and maybe some stage boards.
Okay, cool. So Office Port's a really cool building that has a few different companies' office out of it, but then they have a co-working space and of course this awesome event space. So as Katie mentioned, anybody who wants to stick around afterwards can take a tour of the building, see if there's good co-working opportunities, which is always a really great place to be in when you're freelancing and just need a change of environment from your home or your couch or your office desk, right? So there's that, and then so we just want to give them a huge thank you for letting us be in their space, donating coffee, things like that. So I guess there's no one really here to clap for, but we're clapping in our heads. That's kind of it for beginning stuff. I'm Kelly, and if all my organizers could just raise their hands really quickly, they're kind of scattered around the room. And then Ryan here, who's checking everyone in. So we're the organizing team that helps put this together and make it happen. So if you have any questions or if you want to get involved, you can find one of us. And then you can always email us at hello@coffeedesign.org. So that and our Twitter handle, and very soon our Facebook, because one of our new organizers is good at that stuff. I'm only good at Twitter. So that will be a really great way to find out upcoming events, but a good rule of thumb is the last Friday of every month, up until November, December. That's where we're scheduled out, so you can kind of keep that marked on your calendar. In the mornings, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. But we're gonna go ahead and kick off, because like I said, we're trying to put a bunch in an hour. So how many of you kind of identify as freelancers on some level? How many of you are really interested in freelance work and just have a lot of question marks? Cool, I'm in both boats. So our goal here is to answer kind of that whole spectrum of questions. So whether you're fully self-employed and run your own creative business, or whether you just dabble here and there, or you're just kind of thinking about dabbling because people have been approaching you about side work, we want to answer some of those question marks that we all have. How much should we charge? How do we even get clients? Do I make myself an LLC? What do I do? So without further ado, I want to introduce our panel today. If they want to come on up and go ahead and take a seat. We're really excited to have them here. They've donated their time and experience and thoughts. So we're going to go kind of in order. We're going to start with Chris Brown. And I'll probably just introduce them as they go up, so you don't have to remember from the beginning. But Chris Brown used to be, or he is an attorney, and he used to work for a law firm here in Kansas City, and just this year has branched out onto his own. He runs a company called Be Legal Marketing, so he helps do marketing with lawyers. He also has helped Coffee and Design do all of their business formation and help us with nonprofit status, as well as another one of our panelists that we'll get to in a second. So he's a good friend of mine and is just an awesome helper and has a ton of great insight and feedback. I sat down with him a month ago being, should I LLC myself, what should I do? So I'm gonna shut up and let Chris come up. He had a handout, so you should all kind of have some information around it. But I'm gonna go ahead and hand it over to him.
Thanks, Kelly. All right, so like Kelly mentioned, I just left my firm in December, started Venture Legal, which is the name of that form I gave everybody. She wants me to talk about whether or not you should form an LLC, and then also contracts. And contracts is a pretty big term, but I could probably talk for 4 hours on all of this stuff, so I'm going to try to cram in as much as I can. On the handout I gave you, it talks about the 4 different types of business entities. One of them is actually not really a business entity, it's just a solo practitioner. Most of you are freelancers. Or how many of you work for a company like a corporation or whatever, a bigger company? So I guess you guys just want to do stuff on your spare time, probably. So if you do anything on your own, and if you don't form a company, you're going to be considered a solo practitioner. And Dan will talk about taxation a little bit more. But the whole point of that is any money you make, it's going to go on your personal tax return, assuming you report it, and you should report it. If you want to step it up from there, there's a lot of reasons why you might form an entity. If you decide to form an entity, there's various options you have. They're listed on that form there. You can form a simple partnership. In fact, if you don't file anything with the state and you do work with another person, and the expectation is that you're going to share profits, then you have a legal entity at that point. It's called a partnership. The partnership can own property, it can sue and be sued, and you don't want to do that by mistake. So a lot of people will form either a limited partnership, LLC, or a corporation. The corporation is, for the longest time, been the standard. That's what everybody did. There's a lot of disadvantages to corporations, and on that list there, I list out some of the things that double taxation. So if you're taxed as a C Corp, the corporation itself pays a tax, then the individual shareholders pay a tax, and that's not very good. So I don't know, about 20 or 30 years ago, the LLC kind of started to come into play. In 1998, it really took off because of some IRS regulations. And an LLC shares some of the same benefits of a corporation, limited liability, and so on, but it's a lot more flexible. The number one reason why you might form an LLC for yourself if you're just practicing on your own is the limited liability aspect. But the thing is, if you're practicing just by yourself, and you're doing design work for yourself or whatever, other than maybe copyright infringement or some kind of intellectual property infringement, you're probably not going to have a lot of liability anyway, just because you're designers. You're not driving a truck around delivering pizza or something. But even if you do form an LLC, you're still always personally liable for your own negligent actions. So let's just say that you were delivering pizza, for example, just because it's an easy one, and you get into a car accident. You can't say, well, I was driving for my LLC, so I'm not liable. That doesn't work. You're still personally liable because you were behind the wheel of the car at that time. But there's some other advantages to forming an LLC. One of them is just the simple fact that you look more official. You put your name, whatever, Chris Brown Design LLC, you look a little bit more official in the eyes of third parties, and it might help you get some business. It'll help you to raise money and borrow money from a bank, possibly, but I'm guessing you guys are not looking to do any kind of an IPO, so that doesn't really apply to you, I don't think. But then the other thing that's really good about an LLC for yourself, if it's just you, is that you build up goodwill in the name of the LLC itself, and then at some point you can sell that. And so if you build up Chris Brown Designs or whatever, or CSB Council Designs or something, there's a point when you might not be able to do that anymore. Maybe you get a full-time job, or maybe you built it up and you've got 20 clients. It's a lot easier to sell that client base if you have an LLC, because there's goodwill, there's the assets, there's the intellectual property, and so on. So there's reasons to do it. And in Missouri, it's $50, and in Kansas, it's $160. So it's not hard to do it. I mean, there's certainly legal fees that you would pay if you hired a lawyer to do this for you. But if it's just you, you could feasibly get by on your own. I think you should definitely talk to a lawyer, but you could do it on your own. So that's the basics about entity formation. Kelly also asked me to speak a little bit to contracts in general. And for freelance designers, I think this is probably a bigger deal for all of them, because I've seen a lot of horrible, horrible contracts that people have used, designers and so on, that they just get online or their uncle gives them because their uncle's a traffic lawyer or something. The number one thing to remember is a contract doesn't have to be in writing. It can be oral. So if you have an agreement with somebody to perform services, say I'm going to build you a website, I'm going to make you design a flyer or whatever, and you're going to pay me $1,000, that right there in itself is an agreement. Now there's certain exceptions to that, like if you're buying and selling real estate, if you are taking on debt or letting somebody borrow money, those things have to be in writing. But for the most part, most of what you guys are doing, unless it's really high value work, it can be an oral contract. But that doesn't mean you should rely on an oral contract. If you can, put it in an email. At an absolute minimum, have an email exchange and put out the key elements. It might say that I'm going to deliver this work to you on July 1st, and you're going to pay me within 30 days, and you're going to pay me X number of dollars. At a bare minimum, put those key facts in there, because if you leave them out, it just opens up all kinds of room for arguing, and designers get screwed over all the time, and it's horrible. And the worst part about that is, if you come to me and you say, somebody owes me $1,500, well, that's a lot of money to you, but it's not enough money to justify you filing a lawsuit. And so the reality is, I might send them a letter, maybe 2 letters, and say, hey, you owe my client some money. After that, you're just out. And if you have a contract, it makes it a lot easier to enforce. You can go to small claims court with a contract in your hand and say, hey, he owes me this money. It's a lot easier that way. But that's the worst thing, is when somebody comes to me and they're owed money, and I know that that money will pay their rent, and I can't get it back from them because it's just not enough money for them to pay me to file a lawsuit. Plus, I hate filing lawsuits. I hate court. So the key requirements of a contract is that there's a mutual assent of the parties and consideration. So basically, if you both agree to do something, party A agrees to pay, party B agrees to perform, and you both agree to that, that's all you have to have. You don't have to have a 30-page legally drafted contract. It can be a simple one-page agreement. Now, there's a lot of reasons why you might want to have extra provisions like indemnification, warranties, certainly intellectual property assignments. So there's reasons why you'd have more stuff in the contract, but you don't necessarily have to have a formal big contract. So at a bare minimum, using email. Second best thing you can do is just write it out. Take literally a piece of paper, write out those key terms, and have both parties sign it, make a copy of it, make sure everybody has a copy of it. And then I'll say this too, don't just pull a contract from the internet. I see this all the time. And while it might feel good to have a 5-page agreement that you found online, it's probably totally wrong for a number of reasons. It might be a real estate deal and you're just taking out the purchase of real estate and putting in the purchase of a flyer or design work. But then there's going to be a bunch of other provisions that just don't apply to you. Another reason you don't want to pull it off the internet is because lawyers negotiate contracts. So I'll go back and forth. I'll start with a template and then I'll make all the provisions in favor of my client. I'll send it to the other guy, they'll look at it, and then they'll negotiate a little bit back and forth. But if I'm the better lawyer and I win and I get all my provisions, then it's going to be really one-sided to me. And if I were the hiring party and the other side were the designer, I just got a great contract that protects me and the designer is getting screwed, but I did my client a great job. But then if you pull that contract up as a designer and use it, you're doing yourself a disservice because you're giving way too much to the other party. And I've seen that before where a designer comes to me with a contract he found online. I'm like, well, why did you say that? Why did you say they own everything without paying you? Oh, it was just on the contract I got off Google. So a lot of times you're going to actually be better off not using that and just writing your own on a single piece of paper. And actually, here's the last thing I'll say on that one. Don't ignore the boilerplate provisions. At the end of every contract, there's a lot of miscellaneous provisions, assignment, governing law, indemnification. It's really boring to read, but it has a lot of big major effects. For instance, governing law and arbitration provisions. If you sign a contract and it says governing laws in California and you live in Kansas City, that means if you want to sue somebody for not paying you, you have to fly out to California and file a lawsuit. Well, you could probably do it electronically, but you'd have to eventually go there in person. So you don't want to agree to that. And a lot of people don't even realize that that's in there. Arbitration is another one. Sometimes it's good to have an arbitration provision, sometimes it's not. Because if you're the designer, you may not want to have to go to the American Arbitration Association. You might want to just go ahead and go straight to court, file a small claims suit for $150 or whatever it may be. So I think that's about it. I don't know how much time I have left.
That's about good time.
Okay, I'm good at that. Okay, well, I'll answer whatever questions you have at the Q&A. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks, Chris. So next up we have Dan Schmidt. He is a CPA, probably amongst other really official accounting things. So he is yet another example that has branched off on his own. He works primarily with startups and entrepreneurs and founders, but has been very helpful for me as a designer as well. So he's going to chat with you kind of about the tax implications, what you should be setting aside, how to buffer your rate to include taxes, when you should start paying quarterlies and estimates, and all that jazz. He also has been a huge part of helping Coffee and Design set up their nonprofit status and financial projections to get all those things in order. So really helpful guy.
Thanks, Kelly. Obviously, middle of tax season for me, tax season beer that I get going every year. Before I get into any details, there's kind of two overarching philosophies that I have when I'm talking to people about taxes. The first is I tell all my clients I want them to pay thousands and thousands of dollars in taxes. And that's only because if they pay thousands and thousands of dollars in taxes, they have tens of thousands of dollars in their pocket. So if you make more, you pay more. It's just the way it works. I don't want you to pay any more than you have to, and there's laws around that, and I'll get into some of that, but don't be afraid of taxes. The second thing, and Chris and I have had some fun conversations about that, I see a lot of companies and people when they start, they try to set things up on a really complex basis. Okay, can I save taxes if I do this? Can I establish myself as a Delaware C corporation and be chartered in Reno, Nevada or something like that? Don't worry about that. Keep it simple. It's just like design. Keep it simple. Simple is beautiful. Everything works better if you just keep it on a basic level, especially at first when it's just you as a starting off. So kind of the details when you start off with something and you're wanting to start doing your freelance work, the biggest thing that I see people do off the beginning of this is a really easy fix. They mix all of their business income and their personal income. If somebody paid you to do freelance work, you're getting a W-2, you're getting a paycheck from your job. Don't mix stuff. Banks give you free accounts, go set one up for the business. You can transfer stuff between, but run all of your business expenses, all of your business income out of one account. Keep all your personal stuff in another account. When you want to pull money out to spend personally, you just make a transfer between the accounts. It's as simple as that. It's one of the primary offenders I see. It's not technically illegal to do that. The IRS calls it commingling funds. It sounds really bad. It's not, but they don't like it. And accountants don't like it either when I get in and have to try to sort out, okay, well, you spent 50 bucks at Home Depot or Office Max. Was that for the business or did you go buy something for your apartment? You know, I have no way of knowing. And if you ever get audited, the IRS will question that. If you keep it separated, they oh, everything's clean, it's simple. Looks like you did all right. Okay, we'll leave you alone. Now in terms of, okay, so 1099, so on the income side, if you do a project for someone and they pay you more than $600 for services throughout the course of the year, whether that's one project or multiple projects, they're supposed to give you a 1099. If they don't, you still have to claim the income. But it's on them, and there's a penalty if they don't give you a 1099. Nobody really gets caught with that very often. It's out there, it doesn't happen, but it's a bigger deal if you get caught and you didn't claim the income. So ask for a 1099, it's good documentation to have, over $600. Even if it's less than that, you still have to claim it. That's just kind of the official IRS paperwork that says, hey, we paid this person, and they can deduct it on their taxes, you get to claim it on yours. If you're self-employed, usually if you're W-2 income, you know, you have those payroll taxes come out of your paycheck every month. Great, I made $3,000 this month. Not really, we gave you $2,000 because we had to take out your taxes. When you're self-employed, you get the whole amount up front, but then you have to pay that in, and usually you pay that in quarterly. You can make an estimate of how much you're gonna owe, you send that to the IRS, and at the end of the year, you put that on your taxes, say, hey, I already paid you this $1,000, I don't owe you anymore. And my rule of thumb on that is usually just 25% of whatever you pull out of the business, not whatever the business makes, but whatever you pull out of the business. Just take 25% of that, open a separate bank account, say don't touch it. Again, bank accounts are free. If your bank pushes back and says, we're gonna charge you money for this account, get a different bank. There's no reason for them to do that. But 25%, you pull out $1,000 to spend personally, take $250 of that, put it in the savings account to pay your taxes, $750, go blow it on whatever you want to because you have extra income because you're a freelancer, right? You don't have any time to spend your money because you're a freelancer, but you have money now. The last thing I'll talk about is deductions, and this is kind of the really fun thing about being self-employed. So in the past, before you had self-employment income and you're a freelancer, you go out and buy this great new software platform that you're going to use, or you buy a new Mac or something like that. You just eat it. You know, there's no tax benefit. You had to pay for it with your dollars that you have left after you paid your taxes, but that's it. Once you become a freelancer, you get to claim that against the income you make. So you make $3,000 on a project, but you bought $500 worth of software to service that project, suddenly you only pay taxes on $2,500. So that's really important. And you have basically anything related to the business that you're doing, you can deduct, you know, within reason. And there's all kinds of funny things that come out this year about what different deductions people took and what they tried to argue with the IRS was valid or not. You know, you buy software, you buy a subscription to the Theme Forest or Woo Themes because you're, you know, developing platforms for somebody. You go out, run out, buy a new computer. If you have mileage, you go and drive and meet a client somewhere. You leave from your office, you go meet them, you come back. As long as you record that mileage, that's a legitimate business deduction, and it adds up really fast. I have you get 55 cents a mile, and I have a landscaping client. They do 40,000 miles a year on their truck. So right there, that's, you know, $22,000 to $24,000 they get to deduct off of their taxes. So that gets big in a hurry. Even if you're only driving a couple thousand miles, definitely keep track of that. There's some great apps out there that it knows when you're driving. You get done with your trip, you swipe left for business, you swipe right for personal. You tell it what it was for, and then it saves it at the end of the year. You have that kept track of. So those kind of tools are out there. And then the last thing, in terms of keeping track of stuff, it's helpful. You know, I like spreadsheets. I'm an accountant. My guess is you're designers, you don't like spreadsheets. Am I right about that? You'd rather enter something that looks nice rather than just the columns and rows in Excel. So there are some really good platforms out there to kind of track your income and expenses. It's nice too, because when you send somebody an invoice from one of those platforms, it looks professional, it's clean, it looks like you're a legitimate business. The two free ones that I usually recommend are FreshBooks and Wave Accounting. I think they're great services. They're great when you're starting out. The free price point is great. Once you start to get some traction, I usually recommend people go to a paid platform. It has more capabilities. There's just more stuff you can do. The one that I base all my client base on is called Xero. It's XCRO. They're kind of a disruptor to a startup that's out of New Zealand. I guess they're not really a startup anymore because they have 300,000 subscribers. But that's who I recommend. But again, when you're just getting off the bat, do FreshBooks, Wave, keep track of stuff that way. Did I use my 10 minutes?
Yeah.
All right.
I see a lot of people writing a lot of things down. Are you guys learning things? I see nods, that's good. I'm gonna break from our panel for just a second and have Tina come up and speak for just a minute around the Freelance Exchange, which is this really awesome program here in Kansas City. It's been around for I think 11 years now, which is a membership for freelancers. And they do not monthly, but they do events and they do workshops and they do a lot of things. They're a great resource for anyone who's identifying as a freelancer or just wanting to connect with other people. Anyway, I'm gonna let Tina talk about all of that.
Good morning, everybody. As Kelly said, I'm on the board of the Freelance Exchange. I'm Tina Smith, and my company is Hillcroft Design. And as each of you will go through your design lifetime and do many different things, my background is that I was with Hallmark for more years than maybe I would care to say in this young audience. And I retired when you could retire early, and to start my own business, and I've had my business for 12 years. So I'm on the board of the Freelance Exchange. It was founded by Julie Cortez, who is just a dynamo. If you haven't met her, she's a writer and a copy diva, as she describes herself. We are Kansas City's outsourced resource. So we provide service to any entity who wants professional work done in terms of writing, editing, web development, design, all of that, photography. And those that we serve are agencies. For example, I have my own clients, but I'm also an outsource for several of the agencies. When they're on overload, they come to the Freelance Exchange looking for people to assign additional work to. Our members are comprised of kind of loosely two different groups. One is those of us who are experienced professionals. We actually consider ourselves small business owners. We've been in the biz for quite a while, and we serve as experts and consultants to our clients. And the other sort of loose area within the group are those who are new. They're either starting their own design business and want to work and do freelance, or they have a full-time job and they want to do some moonlighting, or they have a part-time job in another area and want to do some design work. So those who are newer to the biz come to the Freelance Exchange for education, for mentoring. One of the many events that we have, generally about once a month, we have a luncheon. We bring speakers in, and the speakers are our topic today. We generally have a lunch on the fourth Friday of the month, and our speaker today is going to be talking about doing a strategic growth plan for your business. And we ask them to get to the specifics. Don't tell me I need a strategic growth plan. Talk to me about the best way to put those elements together. Let's see, our membership is $75 a year with a one-time $25 processing fee. And we're really, did I just turn that on? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? And so we're really one of the most reasonably priced organizations in the city. We have a couple of signature events. One of them is the Portfolio Showcase. We have it every spring. We have had them in the spring. We're now starting to migrate that to the summer. It's a signature event for us. Members we basically display our wares. It's a large room. It's a nice venue. We put out our work, And then we market this event to, we've got a huge mailing list of those agencies, companies, service groups that need the type of talent that we provide. So that's like a giant portfolio show. I talked about the monthly lunches. Sometimes we have happy hours or after hours. Sometimes we get together with other organizations, like our Christmas party was with Media Mix, our holiday party. So other benefits, you can go online and read this. If you're interested, go to FX of KC. That will take you to the Freelance Exchange website. We have a longer name, but so ways to get involved with the Freelance Exchange. You're welcome to come if you're not a member. Come as a guest, come as a visitor, learn a little bit more about what we do. If you choose to join, get involved in a committee. Helps you to meet and learn about other people there, other people with various expertise, and learn from our speakers. I'm just going to mention also, I brought some directories. This is kind of old school. We're not printing these anymore, but I brought about 20 of them in case you want to just flip through and see who we are and actually who we are. This lists some of the members. I won't take time for questions. I know you've got lots of other speakers. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tina. We might already have, or we will be tweeting that link too for you guys to be able to go sign up. So next up we have Kelly Wagner. I'm gonna let him probably introduce himself more so, but he is a successful freelancer for how many years?
17 on me.
17. So he's been doing this for a while and has a lot of great insight. He's gonna talk to you a bit about client management, how to get clients, how to fire clients, how to not do spec work, things like that. So without further ado, here's Kelly. Oh yeah.
I'm going to try to do it without the microphone. Can everybody hear me? I've got a wide range of topics here, so I'm going to try to rattle through these as fast as I can so I don't go over and take up too much time. First of all, getting new clients. There's 5 basic ways to get a new client. Cold calling or cold emailing. You've got staffing agencies. You have business development guys, networking, and word of mouth. First off, the cold calling. That sucks. Everybody knows that it's not a very fruitful process. I did a lot of that when I was younger, simply because I didn't have any other way. Nobody knew who I was. I didn't have a reputation. Did a lot of calling, didn't get a lot of business. Staffing agencies, they're great for temporary work, great for projects every now and then, but finding actual clients that you can work with on a continual basis, staffing agencies probably not the best way to go, but they may be able to fill some of your downtime with some temporary work. Finding a business development guy, I'm still looking. I know of only one out there in Kansas City that does this on a freelance basis, where he's out in the marketing field doing business development for different shops. I'm pretty low on his totem pole because I don't have the money to pay him a retainer each month. So if any of you guys are out there doing business development in the marketing field, find me afterwards. I'm still looking. Networking. If you're like me, networking scares the hell out of you. I'm not that guy that walks into a chamber event and says, "Hi, I'm Kelly. Here's what I do. Here's my card. Would love to talk to you." It scares the crap out of me. It scares the crap out of me to be up here right now. But there's other ways to network other than these typical networking events. You've got social media, LinkedIn. If I meet somebody, I will go try to connect with them on LinkedIn and create that digital network. And then through that digital network, I will, if I see somebody has an anniversary or something, I'll like on there, or I'll make a comment, or I'll share an article. And basically what that does is that puts my name in front of my network without actually going, "Hey, I'd like to sell you something. I'd like to do a brochure for you." You're top of mind without the sales pitch. Another way that I network is through the ad club. freelance exchange, joining clubs. I was on the board of the freelance exchange as well for a number of years. It's a lot less being on the spot networking because you're not, you've got people that will introduce you. You're not going out cold and, hi. You go in and say, hey, I'm social media director for the freelance exchange, board meeting. When it comes to these groups, you have to stay active with them. If you show up to a freelance exchange or an ad club project or any of those programs, you show up once, you can't expect somebody, you meet Joe, you can't expect Joe to come back and go, hey, I met Kelly at this thing, I'm gonna send him some work, or I'm gonna refer him. You've gotta build that rapport with anybody. With any networking, you've gotta build a rapport before somebody's gonna go, yeah, I see them as an option for me to refer, or I see them as an option to use for design work. And as you were mentioning, the portfolio exchange for freelance exchange, the portfolio review, the showcase. I've done that for 8 or 9 years. And basically, like she said, I put my wares out on the table, potential clients come to me. Yes, it's still on the spot, but they're coming to you. I'm not going to them and saying, hey, I want to provide something for you. They're coming to me, seeing what I can do, and they're looking for my services. So it takes a little heat off. And I also try to network anywhere I go. It doesn't matter if I'm at a horse show or if I'm at the BMX track. If I meet somebody new, I'm going to say, get into the conversation because they're on my race team and I just met them because they're new this year. How you doing? Just start having a conversation and then bring up the fact, hey, what do you do? Oh, great. Or they'll ask what I do. Well, I'm a designer. I'm an art director. I work in marketing. And give them my card. You never know who you're going to run across. I was at a horse show early on when I moved to Kansas City. Started doing exactly that. The guy was the president of a trucking company here in town, a big trucking company. Been doing the work ever since. It was just that simple. You never know who is next to you at your hobby events. It doesn't have to be a typical business network. Open up opportunities for yourself. And lastly, word of mouth. That's probably where I've got my best results. Nobody's going to sell you better than a happy client. I've got clients that put my name out all the time. They're in the marketing world, they're marketing directors. I've got one client that I met years and years and years ago. She moved off to Philadelphia, tried to use freelancers out there, couldn't find a dependable one, ones that she liked. She hunted me down, called me up, started doing her work. She moved to another position, started doing her work there, moved to another position where she's at now. That company has 2 marketing teams basically. She's one. The other team was working with another studio. She started promoting me to the other marketing team. Now I'm doing both sides of this company's work. But you also have to ask. You can't expect your clients, as good as they may be, to think, hey, Kelly needs some new clients. Who could use his business? What I'll do is for this aspect, what I'll do is every 6-8 months, I may go through and write down my client list and email them individually saying, hey, I'm looking for new opportunities. Can you think of anybody that could use my services? And of course, you got to have a good rapport with your clients. You can't just have done one project with them. You've got to have proven yourself. You can't expect somebody to refer you if they know very little about you. And then when it comes to the clients that I've met through networking, a lot of times I will email them on a continuous basis. You've got to work these potential clients simply by, what I basically do is send an individual email to a potential client that I've met saying, hey, I'm out here, would love to have the opportunity to do some work. If you've got something on the horizon, give me a holler sometime. I did some work for a small design studio here in town when I first moved into town, small project, what have you. Kept sending the them an email every 2 months, every 3 months, whatever. Hey, just checking in, see if you need any help, real quick, real professional. 2 or 3 years later, he emailed me back after one of those emails and says, yeah, I've got something for you. And I tell you what, the reason you got that project is because you were sending me these emails. They were quick, short, professional, done, out. I didn't give him 2 paragraphs to read. It was just, hey, I'm out here, keep me top of mind. Oh, I got this in bold. But while you're doing that, don't be a pain in the ass. If you're sending out these emails to potential clients and clients going, hey, give me work, give me work, give me work, give me work, you're never going to get work. You know, if I haven't done anything with a client in a month or 2, I'll send them an email going, hey, you got anything? Potential clients, you know, every couple months, every 3 months, just to stay top of mind. But if you start sending them every week, every 2 weeks, maybe even every month, they're just going to shut you out. They're going to see another email come into their email box from you and delete. Done. I'm hurrying, I swear. Retaining clients and building client relationships. Always hit your deadlines. Creatives suck at hitting deadlines. That will be the fastest way for you to lose a client, because the client doesn't realize that projects don't just fall out of the sky and they're done. They take time. But if you keep telling the client, oh, I can't get it done then, I can't get it done then, I can't get it done then, they're going to find somebody that will. I see my client relationships as partnerships. I don't see them as a vendor-client relationship. I hate that vendor-client relationship simply because you get pushed around. You bring to the table some knowledge, some expertise in what you do. If they see you only as somebody that's going to spit out what they see and what they want, it's not a client that you particularly want. I've got those clients where they don't understand marketing. They were given the marketing position because they didn't have anybody else in the company to do it, and they don't understand it. I try to educate them. Some clients get it, some don't. But trying to be yourself, don't bullshit your clients, and just be friends with them and not be yes men. I see it all the time in agencies, freelancers, whatever. They're deathly afraid of their clients, afraid they're going to lose their clients. I personally won't do that. It's not in my personality to be a yes man and I'll do whatever you say, because I know if this client is not a marketing director or is a marketing director, but they're maybe in it over their head and they want X, Y, and Z, and I tell them, look, the research shows that you're a credit union and you want to take the words credit union off your logo, that's detrimental. I'll move on.
We're actually going to have to cut you off. I
Okay.
apologize, just to get through the rest of it. But hopefully we'll be able to tackle some of it in the Q&A portion.
Sorry.
Thank you so much. No, you're great. Next up, we have Cherie. She's of Fetch Design, and she's going to be talking a little bit more about the really scary part called pricing. So she'll be talking about just different types of it and how to figure it out. And I'm just going to actually just let you take it away.
Hi guys. If I shake, it's coffee, no food, so. And I'm nervous. Is this on? Okay.
Oh, do
Can you guys hear?
Just sit.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
This part of freelancing or owning your own business is always the scary part, because you just don't want to bend over backwards for people and not get paid for what you deserve. And I'm going to ask you guys quickly again. I know somebody asked this in the beginning. How many of you guys consider yourselves like freelancers that moonlight, that's an old term, but that moonlight and have like other jobs, but just kind of want to do this on the side? Okay, so I would assume maybe the rest of you are thinking about or have your own business and you're single business owners. Is that true? Raise your hand. Okay. One of the things I want to talk about quickly is perception. And it took me a long time to get over this whole, the way I introduced myself. For the longest, and there's nothing wrong with this at all, but I personally feel that if you are doing this on the side as a freelancer, that's what you should call yourself. If you own your own business and this is your full-time gig, technically, you're a freelancer, but don't refer yourself as a freelancer, because unfortunately there's some connotations that go along with that and stereotypes. Freelancer has the word free in it, and a lot of people really hone in on that. I mean, truly, they scour for freelancers because they think you're going to be cheap. So don't short sell yourself. If you do have another job and you do want to do stuff on the side, your rate may be a little bit lower, because maybe you're doing that just to gain experience and you just want to launch off on your own once you build your side business. But truly, for business owners, that this is going to be your income, you've got to present yourself as professional. So I always refer to myself as a small business creative, a creative small business owner. And it makes a difference, it really does. And I catch myself all the time as, I'm a freelancer. I own my own business, and I've been doing it for 13 years. Just a quick background, I have worked in corporate, a total of creative years of experience, 13 of which I've owned my own business. So just to get that out there in the beginning, present yourself in a professional way, and you take pride. You are a small business owner. Granted, you don't have all this huge overhead of an agency, so you have to watch your pricing accordingly, but you're also not perceived as, I'm just doing this for a little bit of money on the side and I work like 24/7, and yeah, I'll work on holidays and weekends because I'm desperate. Do not put that out there, because they smell it and they will take advantage of it. So I just wanted to kind of get that out there because I lost my notes. So after you introduce yourself the right way, a lot of people ask, what should I charge? And again, it's kind of, there is no right answer, and there's no like, I've been doing this for 5 years, I get X amount, because everything always changes, right? So some of the things that could influence your rate would be, of course, years of experience, agency and corporate experience in there. Also, if you are on your own or you're a partner, with more than one person. Even if you, a lot of us, like, I was talking to Kelly, and I am a solopreneur. It's a weird word, but a solo entrepreneur. But I use a network. I am also a Freelance Exchange member, and I've made multiple connections through that group and use them as resources: copywriters, photographers, web developers. So, you can present yourself also as a company, as an entity, as a virtual agency network. So kind of think about that when you're using your rate. Now, I know it's going to be hard to do, but avoid undercutting our market. First-time go-getters, you guys are all young, people going out there, getting new work, it's tempting to be like, okay, I'll do it, $10, sure. Or, if you undersell the market, people are going to expect it, and you think that you're going to get all this work, but you're going to be killing yourself. Doing work all the time, bending over for a low rate, and you're really not doing anybody any favors in the industry. Whether you've been in it for 13 years or you're a newbie and you're doing it for 2 years, stand your ground. Don't, you're coming out of the gates and you want like $100 an hour. That's not fair. You got to price yourself accordingly, but try not to undercut, because that just gives the whole market of graphic designers, whatever, web designers, it just underrates everybody. So be careful when you set your rate. Be fair to everybody and be fair to yourself. Let's see. Another thing to think about is, do I bill out per project or on an hourly rate? And most people call in, this is a sign that you have to watch out for. I saw you, and I know you're a freelancer, so you're like, crap, freelancer. you know that they want you for cheap. What's your hourly rate? Never tell a client what your hourly rate is. Just say, and I base my estimates on an hourly rate that I know. They don't have to know what it is. I know after 13 years of doing this, how long it's going to take me to do a logo. I know how long it's going to take me to do a brochure. So in my head, I use my hourly rate and I figure it out and I give them a project rate. And if they ask you for an hourly rate, don't cave. Because they're fishing for the cheapest that they can get. So in your head, you can keep an hourly rate in mind, but I always suggest that people add up their totals and then just do a project rate and just tell the client it's going to be X amount to do this. Give them some options. If you want 2 design options on this brochure, it's going to be X amount. If you don't have the budget for that, I'll give you 1. If you want to see more, it's going to cost more, and give them a breakdown. But never tell your hourly rate. And that just gets into a big mess of stuff, because then you could get tied to it. I think I'm going to touch on, okay, a good example of that is I just had a new client come to me and wanted to get some work done for a website. And they wanted to start from scratch. I met with them and they're like, I really want to rebrand this. I want to redo my website. I want to do some digital graphics, digital ads for it. And all I could see in my head is, ooh, long-term client. They need lots of stuff. This is great. But I knew that he was also cost conscious. So I told him on the first project that I would give him a break. And I didn't tell him what my rate was. I just told him that I would do the first phase of the project for X amount of money. And then it's hard to determine who is going to work well with that whole concept and who's not. This one didn't really particularly work out that well, because then I got an email from him saying, could you break that out? Like, how much of the first phase is this, and how much of it is this, and how much of it is this? And I thought, oh my gosh, he is fishing and pricing for each aspect, and I may not get that whole job. He may just use me for the cheapest segment of it, and then go to the next cheapest person, whatever. So you got to put kind of stipulations on it, be upfront, say, you know what, I see this as maybe growing as a partnership, and I would love to service, your business long term. I'll give you a break, maybe on the first project. If it leads to more work, we can discuss maybe, a lower rate, but and not tell them the rate. But I really want to, work with you. So on this first project, I might do a little bit less. Then you work your butt off. You do a great job. They like working with you, and then you've got it. So I also had another one, which is the opposite end of the spectrum. A new client, same thing. Could see the long range future with this client, and it was a really cool job. So I didn't want to lose it. And I actually, fishing around, I found out that the marketing director actually worked for Sprint, like a lot of big companies. So I knew he knew the value of me because he worked in agencies and he knew the value of creatives. So I didn't price I didn't lower my rate too much, but I kept it in mind when I made my estimate. So I made my estimate. I loved the job, so whatever, creativity just was like whoo, in my head. So it came out. I wasn't over hours. And I actually came in way under my estimate. And they were like floored. They loved what I gave them. And they loved the attention and everything that I was trying to build this relationship. And they were already asking me, can we see you next week? I think we have something else that we want to give you. And I chose to, he asked for the invoice, and I chose to deduct $500 from it. And I said, I just wanted to let you know that I came in under the hours of the estimate, and that, all my estimates, if I bid it at X amount and I come in under, I will, let you know and adjust it accordingly, as well as if I go over. Or see I'm going to be going over, I'll keep you updated. you know, hey, this is getting close to what I budgeted, but we still have X to do. Just wanted to let you know. Clients appreciate that. So anyways, I said, you can either deduct the $500 from this invoice, or I can credit you on the next one that I do. And he was so appreciative of that and just the honesty that I think I've got a pretty good long-term client out of that. So when you're doing estimates, make sure that you don't underbid, because you're going to be kicking yourself later if it goes over. So it's always good to pad a little bit, and then you can always give back, and then that just reflects great on you as being an honest person, and it helps build that relationship. So I just kind of wanted to share those two quick things with you guys. Sorry. Okay, another thing I wanted to talk about real quickly too is retainers. And retainers are a good way to get consistent business from a client. And the way retainers work, there's multiple ways that they can work. But usually, if you're doing business with a client and either they don't have an in-house to go to, and they have a lot of work, but they don't want to hire you full-time, and you don't want to be hired full-time, you want to keep your own business going, you can make an arrangement and do a retainer. And most retainers are on a monthly basis, and you can usually, like let's just say that someone will hire you out for $4,000 a month. And they'll say, for $4,000, we want you 20 hours a month, whatever that works out. I don't even know if that makes sense. But they'll do a price, and then they expect X amount of hours out of you. Now, some retainers will let you work on your own, in your own office, but some retainer clients want you to work on site. And whether that's because they want to keep track of, you know, so you're not off playing and racking up hours that you can't prove, they kind of want to oversee. And then others they just need to be more hands-on with you, because you know, they have the resources there, they have the files there, and they just want you to work on site. So retainers are great because it's guaranteed work. You can count on every month that you're going to get $4,000 from this client. That's the upside. And then sometimes clients will also ask you to reduce your rate a little bit, because they are giving you consistent money a month. Which I feel fine about. I think that's okay. Don't totally undercut yourself, because the downside of a retainer is all of a sudden you've priced yourself in half to work 20 hours a month, and then you get these opportunities and great projects where you could charge your full rate, but you don't have the time to do it. So it's great when you're completely dead, but it sucks when you're crazy busy, because you've made this commitment at a lower rate and you're not getting paid your full rate. Another quick thing I wanted to talk about too is some people will try to, oh, what's your rate for production? What's your rate for design? What's your rate for, you know, every little nitpicky aspect? You know, when you go to the doctor, what's your rate when you do surgery? What's your rate when I just come and see in the office? No professional will break down their rate differently, same with lawyers or whatever. It's just, it's not fair to ask somebody, well, can you do my production for like $25 an hour, but then when I have something to design, can you, you can charge me $75, $100, whatever you charge. Inevitably, things cross over. In design, you're doing production, vice versa. Meetings, it's your time. If you make $75 an hour, $50 an hour, $25 an hour, whatever it is, if you're sitting in a meeting, that's your time. If you're sitting behind your computer designing, that's your time. So I would just suggest that you guys don't break down and tell people, I'll do the production for this, I'll do the design for this. It just gets messy. And then trying to invoice all that and all your hours. So just stick to one rate that you feel fair. And I think that you'll do good, and it'll just avoid confusion in the end. I think I'm probably at that. So yeah, if anybody has any questions later.
Thank you. That was great, thank you. We're going to go ahead and do it panel. So here's all the Q&A time. So this is welcome to all of them. And I'm actually going to go ahead and kick it off with a question, because I think it's applicable to all of you guys. Is what if you're thinking about taking the plunge and you're just kind of not sure what are some of the things that made you decide? How much money did you make sure you put in the bank? How much client roster did you feel like you already have? Things like that, like what kind of gave you the confidence or just the leap of faith to do it anyhow?
When I started out, I had some design studio experience around, so I had confidence built because I worked for other people and I gained all my knowledge. And when I started my business 13 years ago, I told myself, I'm going to start my own business, and if it doesn't work, if I can't get clients in 3 months, I'll go get a job. And that was 13 years ago. So I think to build confidence, like Kelly was saying, get active, network, meet people. I've gotten, I would say, the majority of my creative lifespan as an independent creative person has been referral based. It's just recently, since the economy has kind of tanked in the last couple of years, that it's been harder because people are really, cost conscious and stuff. So I would say to that, feel confident if you have experience with agency work or whatever. Do side projects for people to build up your portfolio, and just, you're always going to question like, crap, I am not making money, I should go get a job. You're always going to feel that way, but stick with it and be good to your clients, network, build up a good name for yourself, and the work will come. So if you don't step out there in faith and just try something, you're never going to know. It's scary, but it's worth it.
Well, in my situation, I had some clients lined up. I was working at a design studio. I was building a reputation. Had some clients, they were giving me everything I could handle. I couldn't work anymore. And I was making just as much money working freelance on the side as I was making at my studio job. So I jumped out. And it always helps if you have a second income in terms of wife, husband, because there may be a month, I built a house in Omaha, moved in, and that month I made $750. That was it. There's months where you will make nothing, and then there's other months where you'll make 2 and 3 times what your bills are. So you can't, I made $15,000 this month. I got an extra $10,000. I'm gonna go buy myself an ATV. You have to build up a months and months and months of money in the bank that just sits there, because when you come up on that month where you made $750, that's not covering your bills. You've got to dip into past earnings.
I'll say, don't leave your job because you hate it. That's not going to get you anywhere. You need to start a company because you love the concept of creating a company and everything that comes along with it, the accounting, the insurance, all the boring stuff. I was terrified to leave my firm, but I love the concept of building my own company, and I work with a lot of startups, so I constantly watch them doing what I want to be doing. But find mentors. I met with a lot of solo practitioners. I met with some marketing experts before I left my firm confidentially and asked them questions to make sure I wasn't being stupid. And then the other thing to that too is I spent about 3 months before I left my firm building everything. I had my websites done, I learned CSS, I got my bank accounts open, malpractice insurance lined up, so that when I turned in my notice, if they said get out, don't stay the next month, I was ready to go. And that way on January 1st, this was literally just a few months ago, I was ready to go. Everything was in place, and I hit the ground running. That's my thoughts.
Really what Chris is talking about, you can take the jump at any point. You can quit cold turkey, you can bootstrap yourself for 6 months, you can do these side projects for a year, but the reality, whichever way you do it, you need to have a game plan. I'm not a big believer in having a 10-page business plan where you write up all this stuff and make wild guesses about the future, but you should have an idea what's going on before you jump. You can't just quit the job and say, hey, I think I'm going to get, $4,000 a month in the next 2 months. The question is, how are you going to do that? Have you identified in your head, I'm going to do this type of work or this type of work, and if I do this kind of project, if I do a website build out and I can charge somebody $2,000 for that, okay, I need 2 or 3 of those a month. Can I do that? You don't have to put it out on paper, code a big spreadsheet or anything like that, but have an idea. Do at least scratch it out on a napkin or something. Have a plan in your head about what you're going to do before you do it.
And have 6 months of money sitting there in case things go wrong. I'm serious, I think that's it. I had a lot of money saved up. We were going to buy a house and sell our condo, but I told my wife, hey, let's not buy a house. Let's start a business. So I was lucky. I had about 6 months there. So. But I think you really need that safety net because things could totally go wrong.
So for bigger, more expensive projects, as freelancers, should we be asking for half up front? And is there like a good amount where we should be starting to consider half up front? Like a guideline for that?
I should have talked about that. Yes.
Great question.
When you're starting out, or whether you've been doing it for 20 years, you never know with a new client what this person is like. I mean, unless you know somebody personally that knows this person and can vouch for them. But you know what, even forget that, because big projects take a lot of time, and you don't want to wait 6 months, because the project is going to take 6 months to be able to start the invoice process, which, another thing I should talk about, is different companies will have different net pay timeframes. So the average, or the best one that you could usually get, is 30 days. So from the point you submit your invoice to that company, your client, they have, if this is in your contract, they could have 30 days to pay you. Well, I had a client that I had this huge catalog project for. It took me 2 months, and their net pay scale or cycle was 90 days because it was a client of theirs, and they outsourced to me. So their client didn't pay them. It was their terms to do a 90-day cycle. So when I billed the middleman, they had to wait to get paid from their client. So in that situation, I actually asked for some money up front. I was already doing it at a lower rate because it was from an agency, and usually they want you to take a little bit of a cut because they have to make money on it, so they outsource to you. And we just worked out a deal where they would give me X amount of money, and then halfway through the project, you can bill X amount or half of it. You just set up your terms up front. But it's a good idea to get half down, especially with new clients, because you don't know what they're going to do. And in my contract, I say also that I will get paid for all the work I do up to the point if the job gets terminated. Because the last thing you want is for some guy to come in and say, we need to do this, and then a new marketing director comes in and say, what are you doing? We're not doing this. And then they cut the project off, and you've put all this work into it, and you haven't gotten paid. So it's a good idea to get money up front. If it's a long project, bill it in phases, and always make sure that you guys negotiate and know what the pay cycle is from that client.
Can I add to that? Put that pay cycle in the milestones in writing. Dates if possible, if not dates, at least say what completion means, because you might say, well, the website's done, but the client will say, well, it's not done, I want this extra thing added in. But then a huge important thing that kind of goes along with that is make sure your contract says that you own the intellectual property until they pay you. You know, a lot of clients will demand that they own everything up front. Well, there's no reason for that. If they haven't paid you, make it that you own it. And that way, if they don't ever pay you, you can send them a cease and desist letter and say, hey, take down your website. And that works incredibly well.
To follow up on what they both said, the whole concept of progress billing, it's nice because when you're getting paid regularly, you have a 6-month contract, you build in the milestones, say, hey, we're going to meet 4 times in the course of this project, and we're going to talk about the progress, and once we have that meeting, then that's your key to go ahead and bill them, because you finished milestone 1, you finished milestone 2, you can bill them. I don't know if this is something that happens in business in general. I don't know how common it is in the creative industry, but you can do whatever you want to with contract terms. So if you want to get paid faster, you can offer incentive for them. You know, you can say something, a lot of businesses will do what's called 210 and then net 30. So what that is you owe me in 30 days, but if you pay me in 10 days, I'm going to knock 2% off the bill, because, you know, it's good for me if you get paid. I do that in my practice. I have a set thing, and when I do people's taxes, I say, hey, if you want to get your taxes done in February, I'll cut 10% off your bill, because I know that they're not calling me on April 12th then. They're already done and they're passing. It's worth it for me to take a slight hit on my rate, just because then I'm spreading my workload evenly over the 3 months of tax season instead of everything being in the last 2 weeks. So I know those are things you can build in. You know, it's completely a blank canvas for what you want to do with your contracts, and it's always open to negotiation.
And I want to quickly expand upon the issue she said. If you get contracted to do a job, I've been contracted to do, say, a logo, and you go through that process, and then the client goes, I don't like it, I'm not going to use it. All right, I'll send you the bill. Well, I didn't use the logo, so why should I have to pay? If you go to the doctor and run a bunch of tests and they find nothing wrong with you, do you not pay the doctor? I mean, there's guys out there that will take advantage of you any which way you turn. I mean, it's happened to me through the years, every direction you can imagine, and that's the big one. Well, we didn't use it, so why do we have to pay for it? Okay.
Are there resources for hourly rates, project rates for different levels of expertise in freelance? Because I know AIGA, they have like different types of professions in the design industry, what those salaries are across the country and those different levels. But as far as having an idea or resources for making those rates?
I think I tried last year to look online, and I was having a hard time finding specific freelance rates. A lot of them based them on agency rates, which is hard to compare because, again, agency has overhead that they're taking into consideration. So I would just say, I haven't really found any scale, and it also matters, what city you're in as well. So I would just say try and Google freelance design, hourly rate. I would just say, because it all changes, and then with the economy again, people have been lowering their prices, and that's what I was trying to make a point to you guys earlier. Don't devalue us as a whole, as a group. I mean, times get desperate, but once you start doing that, you're kind of locked in with your client. That, oh, she's the cheap one, or he's the cheap one. And they'll be doing a lot more work for a lot less pay. So I would just Google and see what you come up with, but I have not found anything to base. I just, off of experience and just kind of know.
And if you offer a discount, show it on your invoice. So show your full rate minus discount. That way it's a lot easier later for you to be like, oh, I'm not doing the discount anymore, that was an intro deal.
In Kansas City, if you're working for an agency, freelancing for an agency, the going rate in Kansas City is about $50 to $75 an hour if you're a seasoned designer. Going rate for clientele, if I've got a client in Kansas City, is anywhere from 65 to 100, roughly in Kansas City, depending upon how much experience you have and who the client is. If I'm working for Sprint, I'm billing them 100 an hour.
I don't know what the standard rates are. I'll tell you, it's real quick and simple. My people are like, oh, you're an accountant, you must be great at math. I say, yes, I can add and subtract really well. That's all I ever have to do. So here's the way I kind of think about billing rates when I'm looking at this. So you have 2,000 hours a year you can work. If you're out full, that's 40 hours a week. So, and if you're self-employed, you can't work all of that. If you work 50 to 75%, you're probably full capacity because you got to go out and network. You got to figure out, what tools are out there. You got to build your business structure. You're actually, say you're only working 50%. You have 1,000 hours a year that you can work. So if you charge $50 an hour times 1,000 hours, that's $50,000. You're self-employed, not 25% off. You're making $37,000 before any of your expenses. So when you think about your rates, you can think about it that way. If you think you're 75% chargeable, it goes from $50,000 to $75,000. Okay, great. Still, after your taxes, you're making $60,000. What's your take-home going to be? Hopefully that's not too much math for everybody, but that's the way I think about it.
It's a really good process, and we tweeted these out over the last month, and we'll retweet them. Jessica Hish has written a really great post. I think she called it like the dark art of pricing, and kind of talked about those things. And for figuring out that base rate, that's kind of what she did. Is she was like, look at how much money you need to make. Take into account how lavishly you live, like if you live in a giant mansion in your whatever. But how much money do you need to make? And then that kind of gets the core of the rate that this is what you need to make to survive. So it's not to have 1,100 luxuries, but what you need to survive. And that's a really good base to figure out the rate. So we'll retweet that article out because it's a really good place to start. And then I kind of want to capitalize on that question and ask, kind of when do you up your rate? Like you give yourself a raise, so to speak. Like is it an annual thing typically, or just like how do you kind of determine, because in studio settings you typically have an annual raise, so when do you kind of consider yourself like I'm worth this much more now?
That's kind of a tricky question because I haven't given myself a raise in probably 8 years. basis. But let me just say, when you do raise your rate with an established client, let them know. And don't just all of a sudden they get an invoice like, crap, why is this brochure like twice as much as the last one or whatever? And don't do it in an email. Call them up and say, hey, I really appreciate the business that you've been giving me over the years. I just wanted to let you know that I'm going to be raising my rate $5 extra an hour or whatever. You'll still get great service, but it's just, price of living increases, and I just feel that I need to do this. So do not just send an email or just the invoice and all of a sudden they freak out because you might lose them. But I think it's all on an individual basis of when you can raise your rate. And that's another reason to don't undervalue yourself, but then don't overvalue yourself, because then you're caught for a while. You're either losing a lot of business because you're too pricey and nobody, for your experience or whatever, or you're too low, and then all of a sudden you have to give yourself a $20 an hour pay raise to try and get up to where you need to be. So I think it's based on kind of individual, I don't know if you can. And then there's some clients actually that, like, I have one client that I've been working with for like 7 years, and he's tight with money, and he always said, that's why you make the big bucks, because you're a designer. And so I know he's conscious of that, and I gave myself a rate raise this year, and I kept him at my old rate because I appreciate the consistent business that he gives me. So
Some of this, if you're doing project-based billing like she talked about, some of this will happen organically. As you grow as a professional, you get faster. The longer you work with a client, the more you understand what they're going to want. You don't have to have multiple iterations of the same project. You know up front, this is going to look good to them and this is not. So you may, in your internal billing rate, start at 40 an hour, and you just know that in a couple years, because you're going to be so much more efficient, you'll still charge $1,000 for this project, but instead of putting 30 hours into it, you're going to put 20. And that gives you more capacity, you know, because you've freed up more time, so you can build it that way. Now, I think there's definitely something to be said for, you know, as you get more experience, you're more innovative and creative, and you raise your rate for this service from $1,000 to $1,200 to $1,500, and so you have an overall increase too, but you do get those efficiencies.
Questions?
I have a question. I recently registered an LLC in Kansas, and it's currently registered at my home address, but I'm constantly moving between states. So is it okay to always change an address of your LLC, or it's better to keep it constant?
You have to have a registered agent in every state that you do business. So if you're not living at that address, you need to update that with the Secretary of State. There's companies out there like CT Corporation and a few others that will serve as a registered agent. They charge like $180 a year. It's kind of expensive in my opinion. Or if you have an attorney that you use regularly, sometimes they'll serve as your registered agent. But you do have to keep that updated, because that's the place people sue you at. If I want to sue you, I look up your LLC and send the documents to that address, and if you're not there, then you can get in trouble for that.
Mr. Schmidt, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what...
That's my dad.
Mr. Schmidt's son, I was wondering a little bit about maybe what constitutes home office or working from home.
That's a great question.
Because, you know, you live in a studio apartment or something, and your living room is also, your dining room is also your office, and then it's asking you for like square footage or things that are in there that are only for office use. Or like, does it have to be like a room to the door or what?
So here's what the IRS regs say. You have to have a clearly defined space that is used 100% for business. So how do you interpret that? Most people, that ends up being a room with a door on it. In my case, I took a section of my basement for my home office. I work over Think Big for most of the time, but right now I'm up at 5 in the morning working because it's tax season. I actually just bought some cubicle walls and stuck them across the corner of my basement, and then I'm using that because it is now a clearly defined space. And then you measure the square footage of that and take that as against the rest of the place where you live. Does that answer your question?
But you can't deduct your coffee maker if it's in the kitchen.
No.
If it's 100% for your business in your basement, maybe.
People do get into trouble for this, but again, it has to be 100% for business and it has to be clearly defined. Those are the only two things that the IRS requires. I recommend people document it because we all move all the time, we're mobile. And so if you get audited in 2 years and you're living somewhere else, just take a few pictures of the workspace you have, make it, look like, oh yeah, I do work here and I don't do anything else. It's okay if you have your office space and then you go and browse the internet in there, no big deal. But if you have your office space and then you have a couch in there with your TV, they're gonna look at that and say, that's not really 100% business, come on.
Well, and I think the threshold is kind of a third of your total square footage. That's what my accountant told me is you stay under the third of your total square footage and deduct a third of your utilities. Granted, if you only have 25%, that's what you deduct. But if you start getting over that third threshold, you start throwing up red flags.
I think a third would be a lot. I mean, that's probably reasonable, but if you have a 2,000 square foot house, you're spending almost 700 square feet for your, that's almost a, 35 by 20 room. That's a pretty big room. But
I want to tag some onto that, and I don't know what it would apply to you guys, but something that I ran into, and I hope one of you guys can correct me on it. But we owned a house, and I had part of that house, again, basement room, that was my office. And I thought, oh cool, I can write off rent. Well, when you sell your house, you guys have to jump in here because I don't know what the rule is. When you sell your house, and if you've written rent off on that house, if you make a gain on that house, or something, you have to pay back. So be careful if you want to. We found that it wasn't worth me writing off the rent because when we were making capital gains on selling on the house, one of my accountants didn't tell me that, and I never paid back or whatever that rule is.
it's kind of the dirty little secret for the home office deduction. It's called depreciation recapture. So if you've written off part of your house because you used it for your home office and then you sell it, the technical term is you have to pay ordinary income taxes. So instead of capital gains treatment or have rolling it into the whole, you get $500,000 of gain that you don't pay any taxes on for your house. You pay gains on that at usually at either capital gains rates or at your regular income tax rate, which can be as high as 35-40%. So I think it still is helpful to write it off, but you do get hit on the back end, so it's something to be aware of.
If you rent though, it's not a problem because you don't sell that house.
I appreciate it.
But if you own a house, it's something to think about. Is it really worth it, to do that?
So I'm going to switch gears with a question. That's more like revolved around spec work, but I'm going to set up the scenario of when you start engaging with a potential client and they try to go the route of, I just want to see what you could do with it. And it's not like I want to see your work because you can refer to the portfolio, but how do you really, I know the answer is like, no, don't do it. But how do you kind of combat that and finesse it and massage it to turn it into still a client that you could get instead of just saying no right now? I mean, obviously if they get really, really bad about it, you probably don't want that client, but what's a good way to kind of deal with that scenario?
There's a couple ways with that scenario coming in. I'm going to take an example for myself. I was asked to do a pitch, which, agencies do pitches for clients all the time, and they do spec work. AIGA says don't do spec work. It undercuts everything. But I went into this pitch with some spec work just to kind of give them a feel for what I thought the valet moving forward would do. Made my presentation. A big agency came in, I'm not going to name the agency, came in, who of course has that luxury of being able to spend a lot more time on it. And they also came in and said, hey, since you're the valet, we'll do your work for free. Well, I'm trying to get paid for it, so I can't compete against that. So when you go into these pitches, you're a one-man show. You spend 20 hours like I did on that for the pitch, and it's spec work. You can't ever reclaim that, and you're never going to be guaranteed that you're going to get that money back and win that client. So I typically try to stay away from that. There are a lot of guys out there, businessmen, marketing guys, whatever, that, again, they will see you as a freelancer, and they will walk all over you. They will take you to the cleaners, try to get you to do something for nothing. They want everything free. Oh my God, you charged me $200 for a logo. You're lucky I turned my computer on for you for $200. Or a lot of times you give somebody a discount and then they will bail. I mean, it's just, you got to watch your ass because I've been taken to the cleaners so many times, it's not even funny.
I think just to, there's got to be a great way to say it. I haven't found it yet. But usually with somebody that's asking you to do that, you don't want to work with them. Because in the long run, they're going to be nitpicky, or they're going to constantly be out shopping for other people, and it's not going to be a payoff for you for a long-term relationship. So I never do spec work. Maybe a way to say it is, I really appreciate the opportunity to put a bid in on this project. I feel that I'm experienced. You can see samples of my work online. If you like my style and you like my work, I would love to put an estimate together for you to see if I'm even in your budget ballpark. And see what they say there. And if they're so bent on, well, no, we really want you to give us an example. How would you do this? It's like asking you to do it for free. And they may not follow up. They may love your idea, and all they need is that idea, and then they'll bring it in-house and tweak it, and all of a sudden it's theirs. So I would steer clear of spec work.
From an accounting perspective, if you do say do some spec work for somebody and they
Nope.
and they hose you over on it, you lose 20 hours, can you write that off as a loss?
Our tax system is a cash-based tax system, which means if no cash changes hands, there's no income, there's no deduction. So if you spend 20 hours and your bill rate's $50 an hour, you're just out the 20 hours. You don't get a $1,000 deduction because no cash changed hands. That's a really common misconception that I run into a lot of people. Yeah.
I tried.
So.
Is there a certain accounting software that you recommend, or QuickBooks is good enough for you, or have you found anything else more helpful?
I think she came in out.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. If you're just getting started and you need to keep your costs down, there's two out there that are free solutions called FreshBooks and Wave. I recommend those. But just when you're starting, once you're big enough that you have some business going, I recommend one called Xero. It's XCRO. And QuickBooks, of course, is the big one out there. I like Xero better. It's a better interface. It has a lot of add-ons that you can bolt on. If you need, if you're starting to do project management, you grow into project management, or you're doing CRM and you need to track your customers. There's all these add-ons. There's 300 plus add-ons for Xero that you can bolt on, and they all interface through an API in the background. And so it's a lot better. Instead of you have your accounting data here, your customer data here, your project data here, it's all kind of an integrated thing. That's why I like Xero. But
I love Xero. He's my accountant. And I love Xero.
We can tweet that out for you guys too. Yeah, in the back.
If your panel could speak to something that I see is related to the spec work question, and that is potential clients fishing for information. Your expertise in information is a valuable commodity, and sometimes you'll run across clients who will say, like, can you tell me some ways to improve your website, or do you think it is with SEO, or can you put together a proposal? I suspect that some of them are talking to various designers and developers looking for information that they can just sort of take and run with it. Where do you draw the line there? You've got to put something forward to, explain what you can do, but also you don't want to give away the store.
Right. When I have somebody come to me like that, I make it very evident in our conversation that I know what I'm talking about. I know what to do. I may give them one suggestion of, okay, like I made put in a bid, and I was talking to this potential client, and I said, look, your interface is a mess the way you have it. If we did this, it would completely change how the interface starts working together, and this is just the tip of the iceberg of what we can do to better create. I just try to make sure that they know that I know what I'm talking about, that I can help them, but I'm not giving them so much information that, like you said, that they can run with it themselves.
I think too, if that's kind of your niche or whatever, and maybe you can pull from a case study of another project that you worked on and say, I had run into this similar problem with company X, and just by simply, and just keep it general, taking a look at their search engine optimization and taking a look at blah, 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 I ended up getting them X amount of followers or whatever. But don't be specific to their company and their problem. Just say, like Kelly was saying, allude that you have experience in this and that you've worked with other clients, on something similar to this. And for that client, you might get a little specific because maybe it's not even in their industry and they can't kind of leech off of it. But it again, and then say, you know what, I really want to learn more about what your needs are, and let's have a meeting, let's have a lunch meeting. And then you're kind of getting a commitment from them, and you can kind of see if they're serious or not. You know, if they back down and say, oh, well, yeah, that was good information, I'll call you or something, then you know they've been fishing or...
Is it quick?
Maybe.
Okay, go.
So if I go to the shop to have work on my car done, I get an estimate that says X amount for labor, X amount for materials. But I work on websites, so there's technically not materials. How do you be descriptive enough to show transparency without giving up too information about rates or specifics?
But there is, I mean, on my invoices, it's creative time, or creative, $1,000. Vendor services, you're doing websites, you stock photography, fonts, whatever you have to purchase. I write out vendor services, $300, one stock image. And most of my clients are cool with it that way. I'm not asking for, oh, I spent 10 hours for production, 10 hours here. It's just creative services was X amount of dollars, vendor services was X amount of dollars. Here's my total invoice.
And on something like with web, you know, if you're providing and setting up the contract with the host provider, and you're, you know, uploading or doing whatever, there's time on that. And I've done that before too, but like Kelly, I won't say 10 hours spent on production, 5 hours spent on creative. I will let them know that, you know, because sometimes you put a bill together and you just put creative fee, $5,000, they're like, wow. But if you break it down and say, you know, X amount for creative, or yeah, X amount creative, X amount for vendor, meeting time. I mean, they've got to know. I've had some clients that, oh my gosh, you have to handhold, and you're going to meetings all the time, and again, that's money. So by making that aware of that, or them aware of that, they know that, wow, we have a lot of meetings with her, maybe we should cut that down a little bit, or wow, she charges for meetings, that's valuable time. So if you can break down in elements, like he said, but not hourly, you know, segments, I think that helps explain what your fee is.
That also helps me to make a demand, so that if they don't pay you and they stop the project halfway through and I ask you a question, well, what did you do? You can say, well, I completed step 3, 4, and 6, but 1, 4, whatever I didn't do, I can write a letter to them and say, well, he completed these steps, pay him for these steps.
Okay, we do have to wrap up. I'm sorry. I know that we could go on forever. So just really quickly, I'm going to just let you guys all know that next month we're going to be over at Reactor Studio, which is a few blocks over on Grand and 18th, Grand and 18th. So we'll be doing a panel discussion kind of on career paths and different verticals of paths and how those decisions were made. So really great work. We're just trying to figure out next steps. If you're considering a different change. And then in May, we're going to have a really fun event around screen printing and letterpressing, a good hands-on workshop. So those are the 2 upcoming things to keep in mind. But I just want to give a huge thank you to our panelists for sharing